The council has reconvened at, sorry, I can't even read the clock anymore. 8:38. I go to bed at 8 o'clock now, just so you guys know. All right, let's start. Moving on to item number 10, receive presentation and request from Karina Green to address Powers Creek flooding concerns.
I'm gonna give you each one of these, and this kind of just summarizes what everything I'm gonna cover, and then you can make notes on it. Thank you. Just because, I'll give this to Janelle.
Thank you.
It's kind of very rich.
20 seconds.
Okay. Okay, so I'm a very nervous public speaker. Can you hear me? Is this
You can pull that down so it's closer to your face.
the whole thing?
Um,
But it doesn't help us.
You're good. Take your time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, oh, the screen's not there. That's okay. First of all, I want to thank the current city manager and council for giving me the opportunity to present and describe what I've observed and experienced, especially the past couple of years, and to be open to discuss how we can work together to develop strategies to mitigate the cause and impact of flooding in my neighborhood. I'm going to pack a lot into this 10-minute presentation. There's a lot of ground to cover. So council members, you might want to take notes for questions and clarifications afterwards, because I'm just going to go straight through it.
Karina, can we interrupt you for just a second? The
Please.
TV is blank right now. So, I don't want to miss anything and be distracted by that. I apologize.
Have we gotten disconnected? Julie, are you still there?
What is happening?
I do not know.
We're not
Oh, they are there.
Video, voice is on, everybody's connected.
But the TV went off?
But there's no.
Oh.
Is that really?
HDMI 1.
Stream and
back?
screen.
Here, may I?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, Kirby.
This is entertaining.
Yeah. This should be. There you go.
Okay,
Yay.
great.
Look at that. I'm starting to figure this out now.
Thank you, Karina. Please continue.
There it is.
All right.
Okay, so because I have a lot to cover, I'm gonna read this because I just want to get it all out there, and then hopefully there'll be time for some, discussion. All right, so image 1. This photo gives you a layout of the general area I'm focused on. And this diagram, which is pretty terrible, but it's a map of the area and movement of water are referred to. So the black are the kind of infrastructure that I'm focused on, but the blue lines are water, directions of water. Oops, I should have one right there. Yeah, and I'll just point to this as I'm going through and say this, this area up on chart and da 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 da. We'll just, as we go, that's what that's for. So yeah, that's the flood in January of 2024, which made me realize that we had a problem because I'd never experienced anything like that in the 29 years that I've lived here. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you is my observations in the past 2 years and documenting and researching and just trying to figure out how this happened. So you can go on to the next image. So I'll take you on a tour from my house through that whole area, as I did with Jill and city council members. Looking out my kitchen window, the whole east side of Prash Hall roof drains into mine and my neighbor's property. You can click to the next image. And then the next image as well. Saturating and at times flooding our yards. After years of requests, the gutter was installed in late winter 2025, which is this past year. Until then, to my knowledge, there has never been a gutter on that side of the building. Unfortunately, due to the sheer volume of water from the roof, during heavy rain, this particular installation has not been adequate, so it's not funneling water away from our properties as intended. You can click to the next one. So that's the gutter that has finally got installed. I think it was back in February maybe. And you can see the water's just pouring out of it. So it's not able to handle all that water. So let's go to the next image. And that's my driveway. And that was during like last year's flood. So it flooded again in December of 2024. So this past winter,
Oh,
that one. So the southwest, and that's in front of my house. So there's the driveway, and then go to the next image. Yeah. And so that's the street. That's Broderick Lane along the front of my property. So then this is the southwest section of Broderick Lane, which is right here. So here I'm on 71, and it's this part right here as it's draining down the street. That there's no gutters on the road, and it's not draining well. Going down toward the end of the road where water is intended to channel into the designated storm drainage field in front of the Gymkhana, which is right here. So the water goes down, it's supposed to go into here and come into here. So next image will show, I think this was later in the day, where that whole corner, which is right here, is flooded because of heavy rains. And then to the next image, this is a different time because I couldn't get in there to take photos with that other at this area where the water is draining into a trough that goes down. It goes into this narrow, this sort of little gutter, and then it goes into a little ditch. To the next image. Let's see if we can see that. Well, that's it really full. That's in
Yeah.
less than 2 hours, it fills up. So in the next image, we'll see where it goes under this new road access for the horse trailers, goes into this little smaller ditch that was made. It used to just flow right into this field, but that's been altered. So now it's going into this ditch, very shallow ditch, and then it goes under the newly made driveway into this smaller ditch, and that's where the water is going. And at that point, it has a hard time getting up over into this drainage, which is the larger designated drainage for stormwater for this whole area. So it tends to back up that way and then back down, like backwash down into this corner, running back down Broderick Lane. So I've been seeing this happening for the last few years since that alteration happened. So that's just adding to all of these other drainage problems that I'm going to continue to illustrate here. Let's see. Well, I just should say that the field in front of the Gymkhana is designated to accommodate storm drainage overflow from Charlton and Broderick during heavy rains. But it has been impacted by alterations to accommodate recreational activities and vehicles, compacting the ground and rendering the field incapable of absorbing stormwater the past few years. This field here, used to be a kind of a weedy field. There weren't vehicles on it, but there were lots of gopher mounds everywhere, which is great for drainage.
Mhm.
So you've got a weedy field with
Yeah.
some root base, to catch the water, to hold the water, and then all these gopher holes. So it actually, even though it's messy, it's a good place for water to go and be absorbed. But in the last within 10 years, this changes and more activities on the field, and that field is mowed down to the dirt now. And so it's compacted, and it just doesn't have any kind of plant root base in it. So it can't absorb the water that's been pouring in. I think that has contributed a lot to how that water is just sitting on top, and then it's overflowing into the roadways, and then ultimately, contributing to flooding in residential neighborhoods. So let's go to the next photo.
Yeah.
I think that was in December this last year. And you can see the porta potty. It's not in a great location there. So I think that's going to be removed for the winter. Yeah.
And
And then to the next image. So now you see going back from there, that's my place where the sandbags are. And it pretty much ends right at my driveway. That's the low point. So that water is backwashing onto Broderick, where it normally should be draining down the street into the field. Now it's spread out a lot more than the low-lying areas around the Gymkhana field. So that's, and I don't think that, I just want to say that I don't think that coming up with mitigation strategies for absorbing more of the water in this designated field has to necessarily take away. I think that there's a way to build some kind of compatibility between recreational access and some kind of a wetland drainage as part of that field. That's a conversation I'd like to see happen that takes into account different people's needs. Mine not to flood, other people to be able to get in and enjoy that recreational area. Okay, so that's that part. And then let's go to the next one. Okay, so here's Powers Creek. And this area is where the creek moves past the end of, I should have this here so you guys can see. Here's Charlton Lane. There's that corner where Broderick and Charlton, there's the horse arena, the footbridge, and Charlton Lane goes here and it just drops off right at the very end. There's those apartments over here. Right there, there's some erosion right along the bank, right up next to where the street butts up to the creek. And there's and several of you have come and seen that, this breach in the bank here where it dips down and there's a big gaping hole. I wasn't able to take photographs because there's a bunch of crap up there and I just didn't want to mess with that stuff. So you're just gonna have to take my word for it or come and see it with me when you want to. But there's a breach in the bank here and there's a big hole and the water just, when we are having storms, big storms, it shoots out this way and it comes all the way down Charlton. Some of it overflows and fills this yard, but it just makes a corner and comes right down there and pours into my place. And the last 2 times that it flooded in December and then before that in January, this was the source of the water that was sheet flow coming down incredibly fast, like white water coming into my property. The whole frontage of my property just pushing through. It was incredible, and I think it's the way that the water can gain so much momentum and then pull this water from here down, flooded my property and then overflowed into my neighbor's property. Let's see the next slide. What do I have? Yeah.
The first one.
And then the next one from there. So this is the idea that we're going backwards now. There's this whole area is flooded, and then it's coming back this way into the next screen. And they're into my driveway, and then the next one, and flooding my whole backyard. I mean, that's 3 feet of water. It was this far from coming in my house. It was crazy, and that you can see that water was moving, and it didn't have anywhere to go because it hit that building, Prash Hall, and then we kicked the fence out a little bit on the other end of it, and some of that flowed out. Otherwise, it would have come into my house. And I think it's worth noting, you can see the roof of Prash Hall is there. So when we're having heavy rains, the water's also pouring down off of the roof, saturating the ground, making it impossible for my ground to absorb the water that's coming. I've got it coming from Prash Hall and I've got it coming from the street side. Yeah. So let's see, where are we? What image is that? Does it say what number image that is?
18.
No, right. No, that shouldn't be 18.
You've got another slide
Let's go,
after
yeah,
it.
let's go some more. Oh, yeah, so underneath my house, so just, you can see the vent right there. That's the silt, so we completely poured in. My insulation on the crawl space was ruined. It was totally soaking, so we had to pull that out. And I haven't replaced it because I want to make sure we're not as vulnerable anymore before I do that. So the next screen. All right, so now I'm going to change directions. That's a nice day there. That's the footbridge over here. So we're getting to Powers Creek now, because I think that's the biggest source of flooding, of course. The footbridge over Powers Creek, the stream channel is filling in with sediment right there. That image there, you would expect to see, and what it was just a couple of years ago was a bowl, but now it's a mount of sediment. I know that the restoration project that is in the plan to alter that some and dredge under there. But I do also know that sediment will keep coming down. And that's something that I understand that the city, I believe the city needs to, we all need to kind of monitor that and have a mechanism for removing that as it comes, because what it's doing is that's 2 feet of sediment that's piled in there since this last year. That's raising the flood risk up, 2 more feet, so we're exponentially every time, every season that's building on that sediment is exponentially increasing the likelihood of flooding in that area. And what happens there, the next slide, the bridge is all the way, if you look straight back, the bridge is up there, beyond the Gymkhana field. That right here, what happens is that water now is going to come down. And you got that much more water coming into the neighborhoods and flooding. So it's that whole area, like in the first image, it's just this big triangle. That's incredibly vulnerable right now. Okay, and so to the next one. Oh, right, and that's the water coming back down my street. So you just keep seeing these circles of movement of water from these different places. And the next one, so this is Powers Creek. That is actually a cleaned up version of obstructive vegetation. So myself and some other folks have been in the creek. I was last fall and then this fall, just basically we're taking out trees that we can take out. I mean, some of them are just huge, and it's just a whole lot of vegetation that is growing into the stream channel. But that, like a situation like that was typical, but what was there was just massive amounts of debris that had piled up to get to those branches. And the water could be as high as the highest thick branch up there was just like a beaver's dam, just a series of dams going down the creek. That's what I encountered last year when I went in to try and figure out why it was flooding, and I realized that the creek is totally overgrown, and so the water is just backing up. It can't flow the way that it needs to out to the river, and so we've been taking it upon ourselves to try and open up the creek as much as possible. But it's a lot of work, and it requires a really focused effort. You want to go to the next slide? And that's where we were a couple of weekends ago, down at the lowest section of Powers Creek through where the gravel yard is, close to the Rancheria Bridge, where the creek then opens up because they've already done their restoration project. I had no idea how bad it was down there because I mean, we worked, there were 14 of us down there over the period of 2 days working into this channel that is completely overgrown. And Kat, you were with us both days, and Dave. So you've got all this water coming down off the mountain through town, and then it hits this wall of stuff. It can't go anywhere. So this is, I mean, who knows? Unless you're in there walking through it, I mean, and crawling and climbing and, you know, whacking your way through it, you wouldn't know that that's what's happening. So we're going to keep flooding unless we come up with some kind of ongoing maintenance plan for the creek. So all these other smaller things that I showed you, they add up, you know, they're a nuisance and they do need to be dealt with. But this right here, this creek is what's really pushing it over the edge and creating the kinds of scenes of what happened at my property the last 2 rainy seasons. Yeah. Do you want to go to the next image? Yeah. And this is when we were doing cleanup, we found a stranded pool of small that were likely trying to migrate downstream, but they were wedged between 2 mounds of sediment and the debris just piled on top of their pool. And they had clearly just recently expired. So that's my last slide.
When was that taken?
That was probably in January of last year. So January 2025. It was after there was a big tree down and a bunch of stuff had piled up here, and that's what caused this flooding here. It was in here. And they were stranded right in there. And there was a bunch of stuff, and you know, everything slowed down. So the sediment was just, you know, it's like undulating in sediment now. So it creates these pockets where all this stuff that's coming down will just settle in. So it's piles upon piles of stuff, and then you've got trees coming down. And so yeah, and we've been working. It looks great in here now. We've been working really hard, but it's an ongoing thing because trees are coming down and stuff is coming down the stream and knocking things out. It's a process of monitoring and clearing and just keeping up with that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There are others here today that can speak more to this issue in pursuit of restoration of the creek's function for the future. But I at least need to touch on the importance of the creek's ongoing maintenance to both reduce the amount and intensity of flooding of residential and recreational properties, as well as to take care of that space as a vital community asset. The planned restoration project will only be as successful as our ongoing support and engagement. I have been working diligently on this, as it is perhaps the biggest challenge to mitigate flooding in my neighborhood as well as the Rancheria. I implore the city to pay much closer attention to what is happening there and to substantively engage in ongoing efforts to support the health and function of Powers Creek Waterway. Obviously, each of these challenges that I've talked about today deserves much more consideration than my allotted 10 minutes can address. And I have more observations and thoughts about potential resources for mitigation strategies for most of these issues. I hope you are encouraged to make time to discuss each of these as part of a whole system in much greater detail towards solutions. Through Prop 4 funding, there is funding specifically for the problems I've outlined. I hope we can put our heads together soon to take advantage of these public resources. On a personal note, it has been very stressful to be worried and working constantly to try and figure this all out on my own. I've been trying to get the city to respond to and take my concerns seriously for almost 2 years now. I've been working myself to exhaustion, attempting to open up the creek channel to reduce the likelihood of my home and gardens flooding again. This shouldn't be happening, and I shouldn't have to bear the burden of these challenges on my own. Thank you to those of you that have stepped up to support and work with me on these problems. I hope we can continue to work together to come up with durable solutions going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne.
Karina, first of all, thank you for so much for everything you've done so far on this and bringing this to our attention. I know it hasn't been easy. I know we did initially, when we came on board, we tried to start mitigating the water on the property. I'm hoping that we can continue to help support this as well. I do have some questions for staff, though, once you've answered any questions for the council has.
I'm going to start. I appreciate you putting this together. This is not just a presentation. It's also kind of the culmination of years of angst and suffering and fear, quite frankly, but also effort. And thank you for sticking with it and calmly presenting what's occurring with you. For the public, I would say, if it was your home, how would you feel and what would you want others to do? And as a council and with staff, we can begin to have this dialogue and trying to identify what can we do, what can we help organize, what can we support, what can we not do. But at least beginning to have this conversation together to identify how we can affect change, who are the proper agencies, and hopefully this is kind of a plea to the public that when you're having these authorized obstructive vegetation removals, that the crew out there isn't all over 60 or 65, that is a more representative people, not just who live on the creek, but throughout town. That would be really helpful. So that's my plug there. Again, thank you.
We do need bodies on the ground in the creek where, I'm going in there every day and doing a little bit, but it's gonna take more people.
And it's an organized effort with, I just want to acknowledge that we aren't just jumping out there and yanking things out. It is a thoughtful removal. We have specific trained people handling the saws. We get organized on who's pulling the stuff out. And many hands make light work. And I think
And
that
we have parameters that we're working within the permit, within Fish and Wildlife's, criteria, and that
okay.
needs to be respected. I mean, that's the only way we can be in there.
Yeah, there's environmental impact considerations and there's narrow windows of wildlife that
Mhm.
when you can go in and actually do this
Yeah.
work, and that's tough. Because you're just trying to play beat the clock and
No, it's always like that. The fall comes and you're like, how much time do we have?
yeah.
Elise, any questions?
Well, Karina and I attended a flood fighting workshop at the Rancheria about 3-ish weeks ago, I think. And the Department of Water Resources ran that training and talked about CAL FIRE having work crews that might be available to the city for a very nominal fee. And so we've been working on getting that contact and getting some response. And I wonder if you got any response.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with Anthony with CAL FIRE High Rock, and they have a program, and the program is open to cities as well as nonprofits as well. So it's not just the city. And we had a good conversation. He was a little bit more reserved, a lot more reserved. And so I explained what the situation was, and he said that he was going to need to run this up the flagpole because it was more than he was able to provide a direct response to. And we had talked about vegetation management and whatnot like this, and he made it really clear that they would need to have a scope of work. They would need to make sure that they had permits in hand, and this is where it's like it would make a lot of sense to perhaps fold in Mad River Alliance because of a lot of the work that you guys have already done, and the fact that you have some standing permits. So we talked about that could be, a potential syncing up of those resources, and then looking at doing some assessments. I have not heard back from him, so I've left him a couple messages to follow up, and I just haven't heard anything more from him. I'd also requested if he could just send me a link or any other information directly so that we could take a look and figure out, well, while you're running it up the poll to get some answers, what do we need to have in place so that we could put together a application or proposal? So that's why I wasn't quite certain how to answer that one because it's not real like
Yeah, I've been
gun
reaching
ho.
out to and to the Department of Water Resources several times to a couple of different people. The person who led that training, who's out of Sacramento, and then the regional director here, trying to see if there's a specific person I should talk to at Cal Fire or we should talk to, but I haven't heard back from anybody. California's a big state. And I'm like, how often should I call? How many messages should I leave?
Yeah.
It's
So we did have an interesting conversation around, High Rock itself, and yes, they do have the personnel that could come in and do some of this work under a contract, but it's whether or not they're going to be willing to take on a project like this. And so they do want to have, the scope of work, the assessments, the permits, everything that's in place. Like I said, just need to further coordinate with them. I'm going to go ahead and hold here because I think you guys have some other questions, but I've got a number of pieces of information for you. So
This may be a question for Gary, but maybe you can answer it too. Do all these drainages drain into the stream itself, Powers Creek, or?
I'm not familiar with like all of the infrastructure that is out there. I can speak from many years ago, having lived myself out at the end of Charton and encountered a few of these high flow events where you would see some flooding that typically dissipated pretty quickly, but nothing like the photos that Karina has showed this evening. I know that Gary has pulled up some maps that indicate that it's kind of within this known area. Is there something you would want to address on that?
So to kind of initially answer your question, yeah, several parts of the city's stormwater system do drain to Powers Creek. So there's quite a few drainage inlets, pipes, etc., that drain off of city streets and things like that and do go to Powers Creek. So it is functionally a part of the city's stormwater system. As far as the maps that Jill was talking about, I guess I should do it. So essentially what it shows, and this is the FEMA maps, you can find them on the FEMA Map Service Center online. Look up 95525, the zip code, and it'll show you the stuff. But basically it does show, and they based on a flood insurance study going back to the early 80s. That's when they kind of initially drew these maps. And it does show that basically the creek overflows here at the Charton Road right of way and makes its way down into this area, and that this area is functionally part of the floodplain. So, obviously it shows it covering all of kind of the Gymkhana area. It does show it going down Broderick a little bit, stuff like that. So I think it doesn't, according to FEMA, flood more than like 2 feet in that area. But again, that's from like the early 80s. Conditions have
Mhm.
substantially changed. The creek has filled in, the vegetation has filled in. Maybe storm events are getting more extreme. And what they were calling, the 100-year flood event is now happening far more frequently, maybe every 5, 10, 15 years. At least that's what we've seen in the last couple years. So anyway,
Follow-up question to that, and then you may not know both or the question. Do we improve our infrastructure as a city, or do we clear out the creek, or a combination of both to alleviate this issue?
it's going to need to be a multifaceted
Okay,
approach.
great.
Yeah, definitely.
Looks like Dave has something to tell us.
It's time. I have some things I would like to add to the conversation when it's appropriate.
Does anyone have any more questions for Gary before we let him sit down? All right, thank you, Gary.
So for purposes of just a little bit of, information, typically in the fall of each year, and you'll see this with most municipalities, you're going to have your staff going out in order to take a look at your drain inlets and whatnot like this to make sure that the culverts are clear and any sort of impediments have been removed. And so your public works staff has completed those particular tasks. Um, I want to say it was shortly after the last meeting. It might have been a little earlier than that. We also talked about just typical winterization activities and making certain that the city has purchased a pallet of sandbags so that they are ready to be used. What I was told was, yeah, the last few years, we just scramble going to Ace Hardware and everywhere else to buy every bag that we can. I said, or do you just go buy a pallet, and have them standing by and ready to go because it's not going to be just one particular location and it's not like they go bad. So uh, they have acquired a pallet of sandbags. So in terms of those materials, and if we need to do sandbagging activities, then we'll be able to bring in the sand and gravel necessary to fill those, and they're prepared to do that. Um, we are going to ask staff to be monitoring the area during the storm events, in addition to your photos, so that we can also collect some rainfall data and get a sense of the duration of, how long is that water out there? Is it something that comes up and then subsides pretty quickly? And I mean, and
And that's
basically,
gonna change throughout the season.
and
as
that will
the
change throughout the
temperature goes,
season.
yeah.
And of course, it all depends on saturation and all sorts of things. But right now, we have your photos, which are an amazing place to start. And we need to be collecting more information so that we can give it to the engineers so that they can begin, developing a plan. And that plan really is looking more comprehensively at the multiple loading sources and then helping to identify where the impediments are and then prioritize, because you don't have a blank check, right? I hate to say that. None of us have a blank check. So if we can prioritize where the biggest bang for the buck and the process
And
can go
then
forward.
putting all the talent together to apply for this platform money, which there is a lot of, and there's a particular, if I may, there's particular. Okay.
Dave, I think, either you or Dave,
Yeah.
one of the two want to speak
Well, I was just
to
wanted to
that
say that
item.
I've been researching what the areas that Prop 4 covers, and specific to urban storm drainage and multi-purpose, so looking at areas that have different situations there. So there are specific programs within that Prop 4 money that this city would be wise to look into, and to find out more about.
So to touch on that just very quickly, and this was something that we did talk about on our walk, which is, and I'm gonna blank on the name of the new entity, but it used to be known as the Integrated Waste Management Committee Board, something like this. And it was established in part to help pull in all of these different projects and proposals and then rank them so that when Proposition 4 money comes forward, when Prop 52 money had come forward, I think it was 52, that they would basically be keyed up in line. And so you had to have the data, and you needed to have the engineering studies, and it helped to improve your positioning for purposes of being able to secure the funding to do the work. And it functioned kind of like a cog, right? So the North Coast, the old IRWIMP, as it was called, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the new name. They are 7 counties, and they were very, very adept at being able to help secure the funding in order to advance projects throughout the North Coast, and that would be a really good one for us to be getting, re-engaged with. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't remember the new name. The executive director is Karen Gaffney, and they just have a new name that's not intuitive for me. But that would be a really good, place, but they prioritize the engagement of being involved with these regional water planning groups. And then you stand a better chance of being able to get the funding
Right.
that's
Yeah, I've
necessary.
been waiting till after this meeting to reach
Yeah.
out to
Right.
her. But I found her online,
Yeah.
so
Mm.
she's got various organizations that
Yeah.
she's working with.
She's really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dave, did you want to fill us in anything on that?
I'd like to
Great.
address this very issue because I've been, if you don't know who I am, my name's Dave Farrell. I'm the founder of Ottawa Watershed Council, which was Mad River Alliance some time ago. I've been working shoulder to shoulder with the city of Blue Lake for 10 years on this project. My organization has raised almost $1 million for the planning of this project for the Lower Powers Creek restoration. And I feel like there needs to be better collaboration between the city. There has been a lot of participation with city council. I've reached out to the city manager to hold meetings and we haven't been able to come together to formulate an updated MOU. And I feel like right now is a good time to talk about that. And Karina has done some great work and our organization has been behind her and helping her try and get some movement on removing of vegetation from the channel. However, to look at the bigger picture of this, if you can imagine the size of a football field covered in gravel, silt, and dirt, 3 stories high, that's over 40,000, almost 50,000 cubic yards of material that needs to actually be removed from the channel before your flooding is going to go away. So Jill has a really great idea. Sandbags are really going to be your best bet this winter.
Short term.
Funding sources are there, and I've been working on that. My organization has put financial resources into my time, Don Allen's time, who has over 40 years of experience working on these kinds of things throughout the county. And he's been working on this with me, as well as some other folks from my organization. And the funding is not quite there. It's not as readily available as just Prop 4 was passed and there's $10 billion. The allocations have not been allocated yet, and it was approved in 2024. So I'm going to update you on some of the things that I've learned recently. Currently, I have an application in for a fisheries restoration program grant through California Department of Fish and Wildlife for $2.2 million. We had to submit that application in April of this last year at the 65% design. That meant our budget was at 65%. That meant we don't have the money that is in the 100% design, which took a 2.2 design plan cost analysis or budget estimate and moved it to more like $6 million just for phase 1. And phase 1 is just down from the pedestrian bridge to the Rancheria. Okay, so it's just that one segment. Most of it is on Gary Johnson's property. I've volunteered my own time because we don't have budget, but I'm volunteering my time to meet with Gary Johnston to go over that budget to trim it down, because funding agencies from State Coastal Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Board, and others have kind of said, are you crazy? $6 million to move 28,000 cubic yards in your phase 1. The price is scaled up because we don't know how tariffs are affecting things. So I'm looking at ways to trim the cost by coordinating with the California Conservation Corps on some of the work. My staff will do some of the work. I'm working with Gary because with the way the budget was written for the 100% cost estimate, it was broken down into multiple costs per unit, and I'm trying to work with Gary Johnston, who will actually be the heavy equipment operator, to trim those costs. And he's working on that right now. I'm waiting for funds to be available so that we can apply for those Prop 4 funds. So I'm going to ask, don't make too many calls. Please coordinate with us, because if there are people already writing grants out there and applying for funds and knocking on the door of Department of Water Resources, I know the people in those offices because I've been working with them. Department of Water Resources funded the planning for this. And when I asked the supervisor in Sacramento about the Prop 4 funds, she said, we may get those allocated in 25, but we won't have our process for distributing those funds ready for even application's sake until 2026. So sandbags, great idea. Patience is another one. The veg removal is going to do something. But what has happened is if you walk up above the pedestrian bridge, which is above the post office, and you walk up towards the boulevard and you look downstream, left bank, there was a sheer off of that bank of a lot of sandstone last winter. And if you walk the section here behind the brewery, you can find fist-sized cobbles that are sandstone. That hit the pedestrian bridge where the gymkhana is, and that sediment got trapped there. Our plan has been designed by hydrologic engineers and civil engineers who have studied the system for 5 years and run the models. They're going to raise that pedestrian bridge. They're going to put 26 large wood structures in there, which will help improve the scouring. All of the willows that are in there right now are trapping the channel where it is, so nothing can move. We're going to take all of that out. It's going to look like a bomb went off for a little bit. But we're working on a plan to fix that. We have a planting plan that covers 20,000 new plants going in that will take out those willows. So there's a lot of different plans. We need to take our time and coordinate so that we look like a unified unit, not just a bunch of people running around trying to put out little fires, right? So I want to encourage the city, and they have been working with me, and I'm not saying you aren't. We've been talking, right? But I need to get more time with you, and we need to get these agreements and work stepwise so that we don't look to the agencies like they don't know what they're doing. They're not going to fund that. But if we can work with them and show them the plans and show them we've been working to reduce the cost of it as much as possible, we'll get the funding. So I just want to put that out there and say we are working on this. I know that Jill knows how to get a hold of me, and so do the city council members, and I really appreciate everyone who has been working with me, and I apologize that I haven't been able to get back to you, Jill. It's been a busy time, and also doing a restoration up the hill, and I'm the guy on the ground for that, so we've got a lot going on.
There's a lot of fires, and so it's
Yeah.
all good. I'm not
Yeah.
worried there.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say that once we do get the funding and the implementation happens, it will decrease the frequency of flooding. But your infrastructure that is draining into the system, that could be looked at too, because this whole system pretty much goes towards that creek over here.
So, Dave,
Yeah.
if it's all right with y'all. Karina has identified, and I want to be very mindful of the fact that you're the only one that has permits out there. The city doesn't have any permits.
Right.
So I want to be careful about how the city is engaged in things. But at the end of Charton, where that fence is,
Yeah,
that the hole is, placement of sandbags and whatnot to help prevent the flow from coming through there, is that inherently a conflict with your permits?
I don't have an answer for you on that. I believe that the only thing that we're currently approved for is vegetation removal in the channel. Anything outside that scope will need to run through all the people that hold those permits for that part of the stream. The only thing we've got right now that's we're really working under is the lake and streambed alteration agreement with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I've spoken with John Hollis, who supervises that, and his supervisor, Mike Van Houten, and they both have said, yeah, you're approved to do that
Mhm.
under their watch. But there are other parts of the bank slope that we don't want to touch that unless we're informing the other agencies. Army Corps needs to be informed, Department of Water Resources, and probably State Water Board, just that we're doing it. They know we're doing the restoration, but these things like sandbagging, I think could probably go under the emergency situation where you can modify something in an emergency. And I
Right.
think you call the county, right, and you say, we need to do this, and it pretty much gets covered.
Oh,
I can speak to that
Okay.
If I can touch on.
a little bit what Dave's talking about.
So yeah, there is, Dave was describing, I mean, there's a number of permits that Ottawa Watershed Council has from CDFW, the Water Board, Army Corps of Engineers for that overall restoration project. And there's a potential that some of these activities could fall under those permits if they're aligned with what's proposed and what was approved under those permits. But generally, any activity impacting bed bank channel falls within the jurisdiction of several agencies, state and federal agencies. So if it's proposed to do things like put sandbags up, I would advise that we reach out, as we normally would, to those agencies and ask, is that activity that could fall under those existing permits, or are there other authorizations needed? As far as emergency permits, I do want to caution that an emergency has to have occurred. You can't do it preemptively saying we're anticipating an emergency, so we want to do this. Typically, the emergency has to have occurred, some act, happened, and you're claiming that it's an emergency condition and you need to just go ahead and fix it. And then you're going to turn in the paperwork later as an emergency permit and explain what happened and document it and things like that. So that could happen if there was an issue potentially, but typically they won't approve those in advance.
Can I speak
Yeah,
to that?
yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I suspected this question would come up. So when we did, Elise and Glenn and I were at the flood fight training, and that was put on by the Department of Water Resources. So the lead engineer of that is from Sacramento, and I forget his title, but it was flood risk prevention. So he was showing us how to make diversion walls and containment walls, and really how to properly use sandbags to be effective. So that's great. We have that skill now. We could use that. And I did ask a lot of questions about this particular area because I was trying to get a sense of how they might be able to help us with that. And he said, yes, we could help you with that. We can help you with tech support. We can help you with potentially with finding funding. But there is this idea of preventative mitigation. So if it's a known area that's chronically flooding, say an erosion issue like this, and I have multiple calls out to them, like I said earlier, waiting to hear back because they will come out and look at it, and they may be able to help us with what jurisdiction does that fall under? What kind of permits do we need? Can we do something preemptively? That's what I'm really kind of chomping at the bit, trying to get them out here to help us figure that out so that we could do something and we could do it before. Because once it's flooding, we can't do anything. It's just too much water. We're not going to be able to stop it. So it doesn't really even make any sense. It's too much water for sandbags. Yeah. But the sandbag done properly, something that's temporary, could actually help the water to keep moving. And there's other things he talked about, like using plywood and things that can kind of create this sort of temporary, that you're not actually changing the bank, you're just creating a temporary wall until the problem can be, permanently solved. That was the information that I got from him. So I've been trying to follow up on that and still haven't gotten through to someone to come out here.
So
Thank
I'd
you,
just
Corinne.
like to say, I
Go
think
ahead.
most of us understand that the greater risk, that this is a stopgap project to try to deal with immediate flood problems until the restoration gets funded and gets going. And last I heard, it might be another 2 years before you guys start.
That's not correct.
No?
So right now, we're just waiting to find out.
Can you come up
And,
to the microphone,
Yeah,
Dave?
at this point, we won't find out about the FRGP funding until maybe December, January of this year. But that would allow us to begin implementing in the summer of 26. So from the folks that I know in the agency, there was a lot of support for that. But there's only $15 million and we're asking for 2.2. But that doesn't mean that we can't get funded. I'm also talking with Michael Bowen from State Coastal Conservancy, and he's very interested in the project. He's been guiding me through chipping the price tag down. And then I'm talking to Aaron Heineman from Wildlife Conservation Board, and I check in regularly about the Prop 4 funds. And when the Prop 4 funds become allocated, we're in line. And so I'm in a race right now to get clear numbers from Gary for the work that's going to be done so that I can put those numbers in front of those two agencies to have a contingency plan for funding. So I'm going to FRGP it, State Coastal Conservancy it, and I'm also going to Wildlife Conservation Board, and there might be also some other agencies with Prop 4 funding, and we'll keep pushing until we get that funding. So the last thing I want to do is not implement in 26, because everyone in this town has been waiting for that to happen for 10 years. And it's taken a long time because the engineering process was a bit of a struggle between all of the engineers involved. You've got almost, I'd say 14 different engineers if you count all the agencies that have seen that plan, from people on the ground here that we hired to all of the offices that we sent it to get reviewed, from NOAA Fisheries to Department of Water Resources. So it's taken a long time, but that funding should open up, and it's all state fundings, and there's no limits on that once it's allocated. So those nice thing about the agencies that we're seeking funds for is they don't have a targeted deadline, they have a rolling deadline. So as soon as those funds are allocated, I can get that in front of them, they can give it to their board members, it can be voted on and approved within 4 to 5 months. So there is that potential. So that's the best news I can give you about. And I'm working every day to make sure that we're on target. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you. Jill, quick question for you. The winterization that you have done this year, is that a new program or is that something that was being
That's
done?
something that the city does every year.
Correct.
Your public works staff regularly go through and perform those activities. Most jurisdictions are doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. Remove sediment and anything that could block at the point that you start seeing the winter events moving forward.
Does the council have any more questions, or I'll open it up to the public? Any other questions? None? Public comment? No, go ahead.
Oh, hi, my name is Verda Pitts. It's nice to meet you, Jill.
Nice to meet
I've been
you.
listening to you through my phone. It's very nice to put a face to the voice. Um, and I do apologize because I came in late and I'm not fully caught up on everything, but we've been working on this for years, and to my knowledge, hundreds of thousands of dollars have already gone to the project, right? Um, so I support community support. I know we've heard the request that the community step up and start taking part in this, and I think that that would save a huge amount of money. And I can't imagine what more it is than boots on the ground kind of work that we need. Of course, a little bit of or not a lot of the planning needs to be happening, but so much of what's been happening has been just like the work and cutting back brush and stuff. And it's if that's really accounted for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's astounding. And I think that we should have more to show for that, than what we have to show, I guess. It's almost concerning. Did the videos that were produced, I've seen a lot of footage of like videos of like people dancing and like partying and down at the river and like cleaning up the brush. Like what I always was wondering, like, what did that accumulate to financially? I mean, and that's real, like a real question. Like, was that like $100,000 per like river cleanup? I've wondered, and I've spoke to other people in the community who have been following this and saying big amounts of money were going out, and where was it going? So we're talking $2.2 million and things like that. Obviously it's more than sandbags. But yeah, I would love to see just like a printout of all the money coming in and all of the money going out, exactly where it's gone so far, because there was a different relationship with prior city representatives, if you will. I know that Mandy seemed to have a really good working relationship with you. And I want to get caught up, and I wouldn't even know where to go to look for the information to start getting caught up on what's already happening. So yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money. There's already, have we already spent $400,000? Okay, yeah, like $400,000 is a huge amount of money to have spent on that creek. I used to walk up and down that creek all the time for fun, and I mean, I can't imagine where we're missing out on just like to clean up as a community that we could do that. I think that we could do that as a community for a lot less money, and then save resources and implement resources where they're more beneficial. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Jill, nice to meet you.
Can I just?
Yeah, sure, real
Just
quick.
to clarify, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name is Verda.
What is it?
Verda.
Verda. Verda, you bring up a really good point. I think I would be concerned if I heard the same stories as you have. The problem with that is those are stories. And the truth is that in the beginning of this project, a community member who lives up the hill came to my organization and asked if my organization would be the sponsor for the project of restoring Lower Powers Creek from Hatchery Road down to where the Rancheria has done the work. And I said, sure, we can do that because you need a nonprofit to receive funds from the state to come up with a plan. Now, planning is something that that's not what I have done a lot of. And this person knew quite a bit about it. They had a lot more experience than I did. I'm an ecologist, and I'm an ecologist with a camera who likes to tell stories about nature and help people understand it. So they worked on that project for about 3 years, and it went through the hands of different biologists and ecologists and restoration planners and engineers to come up with what would be a 35% plan, which essentially was a very detailed mapping of the stream channel and the banks and some of the slopes going in and some of the measurements. But that wasn't enough at that point. And they had spent $189,000 to get to something drawn on paper. And that's because in California, we have attorneys and engineers that kind of dictate that you need to do things a certain way so that the people downstream aren't hurt. So you have to have a plan to follow, and that water needs to be studied, and the gravel needs to be studied, and the rocks and the trees, and everything needs to be studied because everything has a different shear strength when water's pushing past it, and it's affected by that. So at the 35% plan design about 6 years ago, that wasn't enough. It's only 35%. We needed more funding, so we approached the Department of Water Resources for more funding, and they allocated another $600,000. And we said, great, we should be able to implement this with that much money. We should be able to get a plan done. But more engineers got involved from NOAA Fisheries in particular and said, you know, we want you to do a full 3-dimensional design plan to look at the floodplain, 100-year plan, and look at everything across the whole landscape of Blue Lake. So we ended up doing that. We ended up having to rewrite that grant and amend that grant so that we got more funds. And then we got rid of the funds because they said, you don't have enough time to implement, you just need to get this plan done. So finally, in June of this year, we finished the plan. And I was astounded too, that, I think we spent almost $800,000 getting a plan to design this creek restoration. That's mind-boggling, isn't it? Now, when you see people dancing and picking up litter, that project is not part of that. We reach out to people like Eric Almquist to donate and put a dumpster out. It's $500. And then we get Dennis from Lowe's Bagels to donate some coffee and bagels. And then we get Cal Poly students to come out and pick up trash. So the whole cost of that may be $600. It's not $100,000 to do a river cleanup. So I'm just trying to separate the apples and oranges for you so you can kind of have a clearer idea of where the money goes. My organization doesn't keep any of that money.
That has to get redone
No.
now.
Pardon me?
The bridge that has to be redone, that bridge is less than 10 years old, right?
The engineers engineered the bridge. The bridge got put in according to engineering standards at that time.
Winona.
Yeah, I think that you have some really good
Okay.
questions, and maybe
Thank you,
we
guys.
should talk after the meeting.
Thank you. Um,
Yeah.
So long story short, it's planning that has cost all the money.
Planning costs a lot of money, and I don't understand that either. And I'm sorry that that seems astounding, and it is.
And
Uh, uh,
Yeah, yeah.
All right, you're
Could I
good on
ask,
that?
could I
Yeah,
ask Dave a
yeah.
quick question?
Sure.
So the restoration project that's happening in Freshwater right now, do you know the one I mean, across from the Freshwater
That's
Reserve?
being done by North Coast Regional Land Trust, and I don't
You're good.
know anything about that. I've seen it. Yeah,
Okay,
but I don't
but is
know.
that the kind of thing that we're gonna
Yeah,
see
that's
here?
probably been designed by
Like
Jack.
major excavation and big
yeah,
stuff?
Yeah,
Great.
it's gonna be just. a
Not
lot
the kind
like
of thing
that.
you can do by hand with shovels.
It's not the kind of thing you can do with clippers and a shovel. Yeah.
We're coming up on
Thank you.
an hour plus on this item. I'd like to go ahead and finish up public comment. Gary, is it real important or just a point, quick point? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Or you got, okay, got it. You got me, Gary, you got me. You got me. All right, Julie Christie, let's go.
If you knew what he was doing
Yeah.
24 hours ago.
Yeah.
John, if you don't mind, Linda had her hand up before me, and I know she's waiting to talk. Could you let her go first, please?
Thank you, Julie. Um, I think it's great that we have these long-term plans, but I'm really concerned about this winter. I'm concerned about Taylor Way and I'm concerned about the liability. I've been watching for the last 4 years this water get worse and worse. I watched a neighbor's business get hit with a lot of flood damage and nobody really cared about it. I've had to go across and get valuables from my business and my significant other's business when there's well over 3 feet of water crossing that road. And it seems like it's getting worse every year. We're closing our business more and more. Last year was 6 days total from that road being flooded. Once that road hits 2 inches, it can go up to 2 feet in a matter of minutes. And you're looking at real liability. Those people are going to cross that road to get to their children, to get their valuables. And there's no warning on it. And the whole idea of sandbags and long-term plans are great, but the sandbags aren't really going to save anything when we're looking at an event we looked at a couple years ago, or even when businesses are facing such mass loss. And Jill was really great to reach out to me when I ask questions, what has not been done in the past by the city. And I'm not sure what the exact reason is. And I'm sure everyone has speculation. I think that bridge is a huge problem, but I think we also need to look at this year. What if something happens? Who's liable and what does that look like? And we need to come out with warnings to people ahead of time that road might be closed because we've watched a car get stuck in that quick water and it happens really fast and there's a lot of traffic on that road and there's a lot of businesses and we have a lot to lose. So I ask that you even think about this winter and what's plan B if things don't wait. Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Yep, I will jump on. I think we really need a town hall, you guys. It's been neglected. Yes, back in, I think it began in 2016, funding for the restoration began and a lot of volunteers, little projects here and there. But however, prior to that, there is a lot of work that's not being done that used to be done. And honestly, like our presenter, Jill, like I really appreciate our council giving you that much time. I mean, wow. Good for you, dude, and good for you guys allowing that. But also the indentation, like at the horse arena there, that isn't really the arena's fault. That's because when they put that bridge in, and I called it out then, they took a lot of the bank away, they lowered it down. I mean, they took away the whole channel there, and obviously we're gonna have flooding issue. So I noticed also driving, on the road there, I feel like there's some issues. So I feel like this is a really big conversation that really shouldn't be neck down into a council meeting. I think we should have a town hall. In that manner, we can have presentation of where people get sandbags. And you know what? Last time we had a shit show, like excuse my language, I'm still at the barn, but like I had the county culverts literally because they are so neglected. Even though I put calls in, flooding the inside of my barn. I'm in here with pumps with all my baby animals pumping out water, and then making sure that city had grain bags to fill up sand, which they did. And this everybody jumped in is all I'm saying. Like, but we really like the whole pods thing, our search, all of that really is involved with this conversation, because like when we really need to have this situation, like it's going to happen and we're not prepared already this winter. That's a reality check. We are not prepared for this winter, like Linda's saying. So I really appreciate if you guys could facilitate some sort of town hall prior, that people can kind of come in, actually get their 2 cents about the creek and everything with that, and actually going back to all the floodplain stuff, like really making those facts known. And they just did the thing with the whole dam, so it's like maybe bring that in there too, so that's public notice. But it's a long conversation that I think needs to, with your guys' action tonight, perhaps maybe get us something facilitated for the public to have a bigger forum that is a little looser key, that more people can come in and just speak and at least absorb that information a little bit and give them back information of what to do during a disaster. Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Can I just wrap up what I was actually hoping would just that I could bring it back to, yeah, and then
Sure, have a
then we
like
let-
quick
no, we
minute,
gotta be done.
quick minute, yeah.
The minute, I mean, I think town hall is good because probably a lot of people have a lot to contribute to this topic, but what I'd like to see happen is that it's a smaller group, that's concentrated and focused, and to invite people who are directly impacted by these drainage and flood problems. Find who those people are, bring them to the table, have representatives from the government, staff, to sit down and have a serious conversation, or begin those conversations about the restoration project is going to take years. It's going to be done in increments. What can we do now? What is our plan? That's what this presentation is about. It's like, where do we go from here? How do we begin to put ourselves together, the people who are the most impacted and responsible, to come up with a plan? That's short term, long term, both. Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, let's bring it back to council for potential direction for city staff.
If Jill is, I would actually ask Jill if she has any ideas first, rolling around, knowing what resources you have, and I think you've gotten a pretty good scope of the problem. Does anything come to mind off the cuff?
Not immediately. That's why I wanted to just address, first and foremost, for immediate mitigations, making sure that we could do sandbags. They're not the answer, and I know they're not the answer, but if we can have them so that they're able to mitigate some damage. You didn't get here overnight. This has been, many years of sort of an accumulation and aging infrastructure, and probably insufficient infrastructure, and as I said, when I was living here in the 80s, we were kind of seeing the same, sorts of things. So I don't have an immediate answer. It is something that's going to be larger in terms of a conversation, because of the fact that we are talking about a stream. It is going to require permits. I don't. I can't speak to prior relationships or interactions, but the city has been involved with creek issues primarily in two contexts, right? There's this drainage to the creek during storm events, responding to floods, and keeping pollution from entering. And that's, I think, been pretty simplistic in terms of what the approach is. Right, wrong, or indifferent is actually really common in many jurisdictions. That's how it's being handled. And I think what's really needed is to identify what the problem is, finding the sources, because you're going to have to get permits to do the work. And fortunately, you do have a nonprofit that's been doing that work. And while the city has been, partnering or having this MOU with Matter of Alliance, it's been more in the context of helping to secure money. right? So it hasn't been like the city is a lead or defining anything. That's really been left to the nonprofit. So right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what it is. So I really, if this wasn't an issue bearing you down, so it makes, I can say this easily here, the city needs to develop a comprehensive drainage, kind of master plan, and that's going to cost money. And I do want to caution what Dave was trying to say. I don't know that it was being heard properly. But when you are talking about state agencies, when they hear people in a community coming at it from different points, you actually lose the opportunity for funding because they're kind of like, y'all need to be working together to define the problem. And then if we've got everybody on the same page, you stand a much better chance. And it was something that did happen a few years back where there was a local CSD and the county, and while we all thought we were on the same page, it should have been one application. It came out as two. We lost them both. And so it's very much a real thing because the state too has limited funding. So the more that we can be coordinating together and to be unified in the voice that is going to those representatives, the higher the likelihood. I think this is probably a really good project in terms of getting some funding because of the effects that are happening out there under storm events. And it isn't, as I learned, and I appreciated Linda reaching out to me initially and my having a conversation with her because I was unaware of what was happening. There's no reason that I would have been aware, right? But I was unaware of what was also happening on Taylor Way. So this is bigger than just Chardon. It's like that whole area needs to be addressed. And so I don't know if Gary or Ryan has anything in particular, but my answer is you need a comprehensive plan so we can figure out what the infrastructure improvements are necessary to make some investments in.
Right.
So I've just been told that Taylor Way wasn't flooding.
I'm sorry?
I've always heard that Taylor Way wasn't flooding, it was just hatchery. That was what, I mean, and the road's closed, so you can't go out there and find out for yourself when it's underwater. So is
Sounds
that
like it's
not
flooding.
true? Sorry,
Sounds like it's flooding if it's underwater.
right? But is it we were told that Taylor Way was not underwater. Is that incorrect?
Based
No.
on what Linda relayed with me,
Mhm.
Taylor Way will periodically go underwater. I can only go on the basis of what the representations are. Yeah,
ahead,
correct areas as.
2-1.
Jill, just a quick assessment of the situation. Do you think, since you're not going to be here much longer, you could come up with a quick outline and assessment for the next person that's going to take on that position?
Oh yeah, I
Great.
mean, I've
Let's
got a
just add it.
whiteboard that is pretty darn full in my.
Add it to your little
Just add it.
Yeah.
to-do list,
quick
Yes.
your vision board.
Yeah.
Not
don't-
anything in depth, but just like
But I don't know, Ryan, do you have any? I mean, it represents some other cities that have some similar issues. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a jurisdictional issue. Number one, I mean, this is a waterway that's under state jurisdiction, and so they have primary permitting authority. So work within the stream bed is difficult. Getting state permits is difficult. Going through the environmental process is difficult. A lot of cities will fund stormwater management through stormwater assessment, which we don't have. Oftentimes real property is assessed based on permeable versus non-permeable square footage. And it's assessed a fee so that the city has funds available as a special fund to deal with stormwater management. It's something that, you may want to consider in the future. Assessing property to be able to deal with stormwater impacts. Other than that, because the city doesn't have primary permitting authority over the stream, we're a partner and an applicant, and working cooperatively with the agencies on funding. and emergency repairs and other things is going to be important.
Great. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So you were asking for direction. I'll go ahead and throw out some of the things that come to mind. It's obvious that we're struggling in budget. We don't know where we are with that. So anything that we do we'd be obviously focusing on low cost, high impact. I think first and immediate, I would hope that you would be able to find some appropriate signage and safety for these known flooding areas. And it might even have to go further on in the intersection so people don't get down to that intersection and have to turn around. So developing that plan of where the signs go, when they go out, who puts them out, what are the triggers. And of course, that also includes, as they were saying, on Rancheria Road, and then apparently on Taylor Way as well. The second item that I proposed, at a minimum, if you could ask your engineering staff to take a look at if it would be feasible and possibly useful to have a trench/French drain from the east side of Crash Hall, that's the side common with the property owner, and directing water out to the south side so it can take some of that water away from where it's already building up and saturating. Half of that building is draining off onto those property owners. So, I'm just spitballing it, but if that's something that either Public Works and or the engineer and yourself can take a look at it and see if that might help. That seems like low-hanging fruit we could go for. And I guess the last item that I have right now is, and I'm sure I already have a list going, but is to identify the relevant agencies and individuals or experts locally, regionally, and even statewide that we'd be looking to partnership with. And begin to gather that information. Like the mayor said, we won't and don't expect that you will bring this to fruition, but a nice informational packet for the next city manager could be very helpful. But certainly the signage and the trench are two items I hope that we could address while you're here.
So I did have the occasion to request documents. I don't know that I have them all. It's kind of a challenge getting information that I need. I've got like a whole bunch of quotes, and it's like I'm actually looking for something different. So I'm trying to gather some of the information. I'm a bit flummoxed with the fact that it's a straight drain. There's no additional discharge points, so of course it
It's
gets
so
overloaded. Yeah, and
Mhm.
so there's no drain inlets, and then of course there is the redirecting. So I don't know why the gutters were installed the way they were, or at the length and the lack of discharge, intermittent through the
Yeah.
length of the building. I don't know. I don't know if there was an engineered design, and if there was a deviation from that design, or if there just was no design. I don't know what that answer is. So I'm trying to work on those pieces right
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like all that water shouldn't be trenched, and it should be go into pipe and be channeled completely off the property.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges there is the fact that her backyard is the low point. So even if it's trenched off, you're still going to be dealing with, just some,
Well, it needs to be trenched
Water.
all the way out to Charton.
right. But I'm just saying you still have an issue where,
I misspoke and I should have just said more stating to examine that issue for alternatives for redirecting water from that
we'll take a
area.
peek at that.
Yes, thank you.
Any other direction for staff, or are we ready to move on? Good. Terry?
Good.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 11, introduction of the revised FY 2025-2026 budget and approved continuation of resolution 1245 for fiscal year and budget 2025-2026. City staff, would you like to fill us in on this item?
Oh, boy. Let me get my stuff out.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
ad hoc?
In the interest of brevity, because we still have a bit of a full evening, I was really hoping that we were going to be able to present to you a revised fiscal year budget. And the development of the budget is contingent upon the work of our financial consultant. I had given a deadline of October 22nd, and I figured I would spend all weekend trying to crash out the rest of what I needed to crash out. But it has been delayed, and I haven't gotten the data until this afternoon. So it's been a bit exasperating. The ad hoc committee has met twice, and we've gone over to varying levels of detail about some of the budget information that you all have received at that July meeting. And I've been able to provide some revised numbers and adjustments through the different funds, but in particular through the general fund. And now I just need to be able to get it into a format so that you guys can see it. So recognizing all of that, I very, very reluctantly am asking that you approve resolution 1245 so that we can authorize a temporary extension, the third temporary extension for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And like I say, not something I'm very happy about in any way, shape, or form, but kind of doing the best that we're able to do.
One question of clarification.
Uh-huh.
The budget for 2025-26 is actually an extension of the 24-25.
That is
budget.
correct.
That exists in it. Thank you. Well, ad hoc has done, we've also met outside. But Terry and I have done a lot of work on that. And we do have some information that we'd like to share with council and with the public. But before I do so, when does the current extension expire?
Oh,
That
I think we approved it. It was like August 26th. So we're coming up on it.
we have a couple of days, not sign it tonight and that's it. Okay, well.
I thought it was a 60-day thing.
Yeah,
60 days.
Today's the 28th.
right.
Wow. I'll defer to Ryan. I think
Okay.
we're okay. I haven't signed any checks.
All right.
Um,
Well, Terry, do you want to hit one
Yeah,
through?
are we doing this during this time or during the ad hoc time? I'm just considering.
I think right now we need to go ahead
Okay,
and,
so
because
before
this
we
is
do
part of
this,
the guidance.
Okay,
If you're wanting to amend it, I mean, if you're wanting to have us to extend it as it is right now, this council also have the ability instead to amend it or to recommend amendments to it now before it's extended.
Not if
Let's
it's
hear what you have to
expired.
say. Let's hear what you have to say.
Okay.
How's that?
All right.
well, we did meet with Jill a number of times and lots of conversations. Kat and I looked at budgets going back all the way to 2017, 18, and looking all the way through and how things are structured, how we're spending the money, what kinds of information do we get so that we can make proper decisions, and how things are structured. And one of the things that came up, and I know even as a public person looking at the document that we get every year, which is just an operational budget, it doesn't give a lot of information. So it's really difficult to move forward and know what's the best chart for the city. And so we identified some problems, some issues with the financial budget process in the city of Blue Lake. And so we want to share what we found with you. And one is that we are supposed to be getting quarterly reports. And one of them would be, and those quarterly reports would give us actual numbers. And if you think about this budget, nowhere in this budget is it actual numbers. It's projections. It is just what we're budgeting. And so we're never working with that clear sense of what we're spending. And so in our financial manual for Blue Lake, it says we must get these and they must contain that information. But the city does, we don't get them. And this is a long-term problem. Jill, I'm not suggesting that that this is you, but it's a long-term problem. We are also supposed to be getting monthly reports for the council to view. And those monthly reports are part of the government code, and we don't get them. We only get the disbursements. But included in that, we should be getting report on any new revenues that come into our city every month. So you would have known if donations were coming in because it must include all receipts, cash, or donations. And so if we had that every month, we would be able to track that. It should also have any disbursements for the city. We don't have annual audit reports since 22-23, and that has been an ongoing problem. There was an audit report some time back where it was hard for the auditor to get the information and said the audit cost us more. And so, that is a concern because it also makes it hard if you're not looking at those big projections and actual numbers to design a budget that is, that works for the city of Blue Lake.
Yeah. We have a presentation going back and forth, or did you?
No, do you mind if I ask one quick question? Is this gonna affect
Yes.
our outcome of, okay,
Yes.
okay.
We think that this information is critical to the council before extending this budget. And it may be that we extend it exactly as it is, but I think time is of the essence that we bring forward our findings that we have, to the best of our ability, by hand, researched and calculated. As an overview, we can't ignore the economic climate that we are in between inflation, loss of federal dollars and grants and support, and none of us expected the level of clawbacks that are happening as well from the federals. That's putting greater impact and need being posed on the state. So while the state will step up and help when and where they can, it's going to be, I anticipate it would be very limited and very competitive. We've been very reliant on grants in the past. How much that might really be able to aid us in the future, I don't think it's prudent for us to plan too much and too heavily on grants to help us out. So with the budget and what I found, I went through from 2017-18 all the way to current. And, for a city, what we do, the most basic functions, water, sewer, roads. So I'm a simple girl. I'm going to look at these simple needs and see where we're at with them. With water, it's Fund 60, 61, and 62. With sewer, 70, 71, and 72. And what we have on the Water Capital Reserve Fund is a structural deficit. And we have gone on our water fund, and let me get my, it's so hard to talk and look at papers. Thanks for being patient. As a for instance, in 2018, 2017, this is directly from the budget, the beginning balance was $893,000. The ending balance was projected to be $961,000. And in 2019 and 2020, even better, the beginning balance would be $1 million and basically $1 million. And the ending balance would be very close to the same, still $1 million. As of the 2024-25 budget, we are at a beginning balance of $350,000, an ending balance of $260,000. We have no accounting and no audit to even tell us how far off we are from those. And if we were to have implemented the 2025-26 budget, our beginning balance would be $243,000 with a balance ending of $102,000. That is $1 million between the 2019-20 budget to now. That's in addition to the approximately $500,000 a year we get in revenue. So we have a structural deficit. And to be clear, what the water operating fund does, that is your day-to-day cost, whether it's the staff going out reading the meters, the staff in the offices generating the bills. It's for more of the day-to-day. The next fund that you have would be, actually, thanks for your patience, is the Fund 61. And that really has to do with your fees and your connections. So that's not a fund that you can just draw from and say, oh, well, the reserve, I mean, our operating fund is low, we'll use that. It's a restricted fund. But where we would go as we look to the water fund going broke, essentially, is we would look to Fund 62, and that's our Water Capital Reserve Fund. If we have a major break in the line, we have a failure, we have to do something different with the tank, maybe that grant gets clawed back. We have a balance, a beginning balance of about $14,000. That is our capital reserve fund for water. So again, just to know, in a water operating fund where we began with a balance of $1 million in the 2019-2020 budget, by this year, we're floating at about $250,000, and that's an estimate because we don't have a clear accounting. And with our capital reserve fund, we have about 15 grand. So these are some of the most fundamental things that we can provide, and we have to look at the needs of our infrastructure and plan for that. The second item.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Has staff verified these numbers?
Staff
Have I
not.
what?
Have you verified these numbers?
She does not have.
No, I
Okay,
don't have
yeah.
those.
Okay.
I've been like calculating this stuff by hand, and here you can see the red. What you
And
can
we
see
just took it directly from. the budget.
directly off of our budgets,
Yeah.
off of the signed budgets. Thank you. And we began a structural deficit in the water operating fund in 2020, 2021. And we've had a deficit every year between projected revenues and expenses. With the sewer operating fund, it's similar, not as extreme, because we have in our sewer capital reserve fund, we have over $1 million, or we should have. And it's been hanging around $1 million for the last 9 years. So if we have a tragic event, a huge infrastructure or capital improvement we have to make with sewer, we have it, but those are restricted funds. Those aren't for the staff and for the administration of the account. That can't be pulled into it, to the best of my knowledge. And where we are with the sewer operating fund, it began what appears to be a structural deficit, where we budgeted for our expenditures to exceed our revenue, and we continue that every day, or I'm sorry, every year, where when we began in 2018, 2017, with a projected ending balance of $58,000, the current budget is projecting an ending balance, beginning balance of a negative $245,000. But it looks like it's anticipating larger than expected revenues. So the end balance for 24-25 is projected to be negative $184,000. The good news, again, just to clarify, is that with the sewer capital reserve fund, there should be about $1 million in there. Again, we're kind of running blind because we haven't been able to verify these, but just based on the budget progression. And that's why we wanted to bring this to the attention of council before we move forward. I want to make sure I stay on point, Terry. Now, similarly, I did calculations off of the general fund, because those are, as you know, they're separate. They're the enterprise funds. And we all like nice things. We want to have a happy and healthy community. Right now, for the year 2025-26 budget that was to have been presented to council, $500,000 was allotted to Parks and Recreation. $500,000 when our water operating fund is going broke. we have, boy, with Parks and Recreation, when you look in the budgets, you'll see revenues will combine Parks and Recreation, and it looks like a big happy number. When you go to the expenditures, they're broken out maybe by the skate park and the park facility and the youth program, so they look like smaller numbers. But starting in the 2017-18, we operated at a deficit of $94,000. It was budgeted for, and this one is a little difficult, I'm sorry, it might have been $250,000 with revenues expected of 145. That is built-in losses. For 2018 and 2019, it was budgeted for a revenue of $142,000 and expenses of $224,000, creating an $83,000 deficit. In the same year, the next year, $84,000 deficit, and the next, and the next. And mind you, as recent as 2020, it was a budget of $229,000. That's double. It is proposed to be double that while we've been running a significant deficit every single year. We had $145,000 in 2023, and the deficit would grow to $212 just for that year, not the total. That's each year. And if you calculate that up, since 2018, over $1 million lost. That doesn't take into account $177,000 per capita. It doesn't take into account the stimulus money. These are huge numbers. And it doesn't mean we have to shut down the parks, but it means we have got to consider and prioritize infrastructure, water, drainage. And we also have to reach out to the community and say, how can you supplement on these parks? It's not sustainable. $500,000 is not sustainable.
Well, and one point, Kat, is that we only have about $1 million general fund yearly. We take in about $1 million, and so at $500,000 it was projected to be budgeted. That's 49.3% of the only fund we have that you can use by choice. And so it's not that we don't care about it, it's that we have to look at the whole picture. So when someone comes up and says that budget has increased just in a few short years by $250,000, that is substantial. We have to look at why and how can we improve what we take in.
Pat,
I
could
have-
I offer a couple?
We have two other items. If we can kind of, if it's been a long night and it's kind of hard to stay focused at this point, and we do have a little more critical information, if it can wait, that would be helpful.
We can wait. It's just
Thank you.
additional to what you said there.
Item 9 and 10, we have no in-house ability to develop timely financial reports. And it's not a criticism on staff, but it hasn't been prioritized as a skill set that we have that ability. And we have no in-house ability to develop a budget and department trends over time. That is why you see these little silly sheets where I have by hand till 1 o'clock in the morning putting in the expected revenue, the expenditures, the anticipated deficit, the beginning and ending balances, and where you see that red going from left to right, that's where those deficits start. And it's a lot for a small town. Perry, you're up.
We don't have, in the beginning of this budget, there's no narratives. There's nothing that explains to the council, what is our budget look like? And we also saw some concerning issues of amendments being given to the council. And so this would be delivered to the council. The council looks at it. That's what happened in 24, 25.
Yeah.
And the very next month, a huge amount of amendments
Yeah.
came in. Now, I can see some little things would come in, but the expenses were over $300,000. And so that, it's hard to wrap your head around that there could be that much floating out. And it totally changes the way you would be looking at this budget. Because you would be saying, wait a minute, now revenues came in, but they were not equal to the amount. It was about, close to $100,000 that was still out there in expenses. It's hard to tell. There's no way of looking in the budget and seeing if they transfer money from one place to another, which would be a general accounting principle to say you would make an audit trail in that so that you would know where that it's not in here. So it's very difficult to see where money's going one place to another. The line item budget detail was collapsed over the years. So it's very hard when you see things like other expenses. It's because it's been so collapsed. We can't look at what the trends are, where there might be problem areas. We're unable to determine what the current staffing levels are based on this budget. And that, according to our to our financial manual, should be part of what's in here, is that we get to see how many people are employed and, and how many full-time and part-time positions we have. And we're unable to determine the current salary placement. And that, is something Jill is working on, making sure that's included in the next budget. The budgets in the current budget has money in it for the donations of the bike park. They're accounted for in the revenues, but not in no expenses are included. So it improves the bottom line of the revenues, but not the expense. But you don't get to see what expenses are out there.
And that should be a separate fund.
It should be a totally separate fund, and that fund should be included in our budget. Having those major financial reports done by an outside agency doesn't support the checks and balances that need to happen within our city. And there needs to be a full accounting of grants regularly to the council so that we can see the full amount coming in, going out, and understanding all aspects of the budget.
You should get monthly reports and laws for sure.
What number are you on, Terry?
And then also the full accounting of the grants are not regularly provided. I think I got one ahead, so I was on 21.
Okay. And did you have, number 18 is really important.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss
that-
that one?
I'm going to read that out because I don't know where to go for this information. But we have no idea what our actual current balance is of the general fund. We don't know. We don't even know close. We have a stack of budgets, and then we have amendments. Like, here's an example. This amendment for fiscal year 2023-24 was submitted in July of 2024 at the end of the budget cycle, actually after the budget cycle. That's when this was submitted. After.
Well,
Budget amendments, however, when they begin to become a tool to approve excess expenditures without council knowledge, I mean, that is a problem. Things can come in and out unexpectedly, but if you begin to look through each of these amendments and you realize that these are happening, these aren't small numbers, these are large numbers, and they typically fall expenditures in the general fund around parks and recreation, and often also staffing and excess staffing. There has to be an adherence to the budget as it's presented. It isn't a tool just to say we did it. It is a guide to follow. And without those quarterly financial reports that are required by our financial policy, I have the floor, madam, by not having those quarterly financial reports, we don't know that there has been an excess expenditure. We don't know if there's been a transfer of funds. We don't know if more money came in. And waiting until after the end of a budget to make an amendment is a shortcut that could cost us dearly. We don't know.
And I might add that the financial document that we have for the city, which is the financial manual, does state that amendments would be brought to the council. So if you are spending over what is in your budgeted amount within any fund, that amendment must be brought to the council at the time it's happening. You can't wait until the end of the year, because what if the council said no? Then you would have an entire year of amendments and things that you've made with the budget. There's one year in particular where the entire, a great part of the general fund, more was taken out, more was spent over the year than what was budgeted. And it's really important for us to understand, so we are all on the same page, that that needs to come before the council, so that we know what's being spent all along the way and get to make the decisions about those expenditures at the time. So,
I think we went through
yeah.
our highlight reel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that one of the things I might add too is that we have a list of recommendations, and we'll share those with you. We can, about how we proceed here. But one of them is that we have a balanced budget, or we really look at how we're going to make cuts and look into spending patterns in Blue Lake.
So tonight we're just looking at an extension so that the city can function. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So we've received all this information.
No, it's, one of the recommendations is tonight we need to look at the impacts of this. We are already 1/3 of the way into our spending, and we're spending with known deficits built in, both in water operating fund and sewer operating fund. And we have a $500 million, no, actually $470,000, my bad, $470,000 towards Parks and Rec, which is almost twice of what it was just a couple of years ago. Once we approve funds for that budget, it can be used and applied and moved around. And we have that ability now to say, we need to make some changes, and then we can extend it. And that's the sense of urgency that I have. And the longer that we wait to make the necessary changes, the harder they will impact, because we have less time to distribute it over.
Jill, what's the minimum extension time that you would need to develop a budget? I mean, like, obviously I'm not holding you to it. We're just like,
Yeah, okay. So before I answer that
great.
question, I want to add just a couple things. One is the issue of the 23-24 audit. It hasn't been completed. It should have been completed last October for submittal to the auditor. So that's still in the works, about 98% of the way completed. Your last monthly report came to council in March of this year. And I think there's a variety of reasons as to why those efforts have stalled, but it is, I'll simply say that it's part of a larger pattern, if you will. So it's not a recent thing. I can go back through the prior audits, and that was a regular finding in terms of the lack of timely submission, and it was identified as material weakness multiple times. So I don't have your numbers, but a lot of what you're describing is kind of coming through in other ways. So I don't have, like I said, I don't have specifics. Part of my challenge with looking at your budget is that you can't look at it and get your head wrapped around it really easy. I can't tell you what the story is about the organization. And primarily because of the way that the groupings are used, and the fact that you don't have the ability to look back for trend lines, and that is really important. So as I've been trying to wrestle and not having any institutional knowledge, I'm kind of having to gauge. It's really great that the financial contractor is now re-engaged, and I was able to give him some revisions to start looking at. But I'm basically, and this is the next piece that's on me, I'm looking at reformatting it so that you can see your revenues, you can see your line items by GL, by fund, and then you've got your totals at the bottom. And that way we can see which fund is operating in, surplus or balanced or deficit. And depending on the fund and what kind of restrictions it may or may not have, how we can potentially start moving things around. It's also going to require that council's going to have to weigh in with prioritizing, what the city services will be. But right now, I can't, I mean, I literally got like the numbers that I can start plugging in today. But my intent is to bring you something forward that's going to let you get a sense of where you stand, based on the numbers. I'm not looking at trend lines. I'm looking very minimally at forecasting. But I think we can all acknowledge that the abilities to secure grant funds moving forward is going to become, increasingly difficult right now. The ability to secure loans,
Yeah.
I don't know that you can secure a loan because of the lack of audits and some of the lack of having a budget right now. So that just really puts.
I just want to clarify. So, like with our water operating budget, which looks to bottom out and we have no reserve, it's feasible that we might not even be able to get a loan, at least not at any favorable rates.
Superficially, I would say yes.
Okay.
There may be some workarounds, but and I think that's part of the reason why now let's take the work, get it somewhere, and look at where we are, right now for planning purposes. All of this information is really helpful in the sense that you can get a sense of like what was the pathway that has resulted in the current condition. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's also one, kind of assure that, yeah, we're trying to get these other pieces back on, but more importantly, I want to bring forward a document that's capturing all of this information so that you can be making informed, direction and decisions in there. And so, yeah.
Do you think it'd be appropriate now if I had the ad hoc finish up the recommendations? Because I think that's what you had left, right?
Yes.
No, this is all a surprise to me.
Well, I
So
just
you-
wanted to make.
Yeah,
Well, you said
we
you-
were
Oh,
still
good.
working on this afternoon. Otherwise, most definitely would have provided you with this. My
So-
apologies. Yeah.
You
No.
said you wanted to hear what she was saying, and then you would let her know. So I was waiting for you to like.
Oh,
do
I
it.
was wanting to. Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
good.
Didn't you?
So we had some recommendations, and we'll probably have some holes in this because this is, you're up till 1 o'clock in the morning going through pounds of budget paperwork. You're a little tired, but between Terry and I think you've mentioned some of these already. So a budget study session, that's for council. We can look at, first, let's look at our financial policy because then we're going to recognize if we aren't getting what we're supposed to. But then the budget study session is also for how we develop the budget. And we're going to have some difficult conversations about what are the priorities of the people and the council. 2 was develop a budget preparation process, which includes a timeline of the process. The process must include staff and public input and council priorities before the draft budget is produced. This process should include structural improvements of the operational budget, trend funds over time, expand budget details, include a detailed narrative of the city's financial position in place of the glossary of terms of the funds, provide informative graphs to support budget understanding for all stakeholders, improve and provide detailed descriptions of transfers between funds.
And one thing I'd like to clarify on that is we aren't looking at this for the current year.
I don't think
Yeah,
that would be
no, thank you,
impossible.
Terry,
There's
yeah.
no way that
Saying
that
what
could be
we're
achieved.
Get to
saying
it,
any of
Jill.
that.
This is our recommendation
Yeah.
moving forward.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terry suggested we update our check signing policy. We want to continue to check for internal controls that are in place within the city's financial system. Continue examining the spending patterns of the city. We have the operational budget must include clear audit trails. Receive a balanced budget. Receive quarterly financial reporting. Develop in-house reporting capacity. Develop policy for maintaining fiscally sound fund reserves. And budget should include a capital budget and capital infrastructure plan. Terry, do you
And
have?
I would just say on the capital improvement plan, I don't see, and that was a recommendation from Gary as well. And listening to what's happening tonight and with all the issues in the city, Gary did recommend in the land use element that that was something that we did, was make a capital improvement plan. And that's looking at all of the infrastructure that we have in the city and looking at a 5-year plan for how we would address, at least going 5 years out, how we would address those issues. And so starting to have that conversation about what are the needs of,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
of our infrastructure,
I don't know why
because
we don't
it's
have something
aging
like
and
that.
having a hard time. So.
Oh, that's
So-
incredible work, you guys. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
I would love for it to be all typed out in a summary executive summary report with graphs and available for the public for our minutes for the next meeting.
Okay, all right.
And we did say that it would be
Yeah.
important to, put all the information together and, we
Mhm.
just wanted to speak to it because we feel like the importance of just looking at what we can do right now and in working with Jill and direction from you if you want us to continue to, as a ad hoc, work with Jill and see what we can do to help help make this work better so that we have money for things that we do need to spend money on over the next year.
Can I just offer something real quick, which is everything that you've listed is very reasonable, right? It's the fact that we're going to have to pivot to kind of like a new thing. Your financial policy has some really good bones to it. There was mission drift where you weren't adhering, and it does identify like a mid-year budget review. And a mid-year budget review from a timely perspective would mean, we're going to take a look. We can expect about a 50% expenditure, plus or minus, because your mid-year budget review. And more importantly, it serves the platform for, as your staff begins developing a budget, what are these trends looking like for right now? And can you give us counsel? Can you give us direction? It looks like we've gotten more revenue. We're proposing to expend and build that into the next, budget that would then come forward to council about May or June. So there is a timeline component, and ideally through your mid-year budget introduction and then your draft, you would identify what that timeline would be in those different steps and whether or not you want to use an ad hoc committee or to form a financial committee of the city and solicit members of the public to participate in that as well. You are really thin in terms of capacity. A larger entity like Fortuna or Arcata or Eureka, they're going to be able to do something like that because they've got the staff to help support. You don't have that here. So, there will be some challenges, but I think that everything that you're looking for, there should be nothing about a budget that is a mystery. Every single one of you, I should be able to say, what is your budget? What is your revenue? What are your expenditures? And what do you have here? And everybody should be able to hit it right there. You can't do it.
No way.
You can't do it. And that's been a challenge. So yeah, everything that you're asking for is reasonable. Please, send it over here. I'd like to incorporate it as part of the budget when we get it done, so that way we've got it memorialized in a document, so that moving forward with your next city manager, they've got some really clear directives on that. I've got a couple of other recommendations that I'll work on at another time because it's
That was
late
my
and we
little-
still have several
Yeah.
items
Right.
to be addressing, and we
That
do
was
have
yours.
one person who is located in Tennessee who is
Okay.
waiting
right.
to
Okay.
address us.
Oh my.
So do we need to open up this for public
Thank you.
comments?
I think so.
Public comment on this item?
Well, yeah.
You- Jenny, go ahead.
He's in Tennessee.
I just wanted to say that I am super thankful to hear the urgency and concern from your ad hoc committee. is really consistent with the concern that I voiced to you in July when I looked at your budget. I think their concerns are really valid, and I just want to encourage the council that with your enterprise funds, what you adopted in your most recent race study isn't even consistent with what your consultant had recommended. And then they made a suggestion that was even less than that, which you also did not adopt. And so part of the reason that you're seeing that super large loss in your water and sewer enterprise funds is because of that. And there's really no choice but to either decrease your expenses or increase your revenues by increasing your rates. So I was really glad to hear all the recommendations. I think they're super reasonable. I think that this council should be getting monthly financial statements and definitely quarterly ones. So it doesn't seem unreasonable at all to expect that your future city manager will do those things.
Great, thank you.
Hi, it's late and I'm punchy here, but I have to say, I don't know where these numbers are coming from. I don't know where you've got that information that we didn't have quarterly reports, because we always had quarterly reports from the previous city manager. And we had budgets that were on time and under budget every year. The audit was a whole nother thing. That was the auditor's issue and our fiscal officer's issue. Those were always a little late, but the budgets were always on time and under budget. And we had quarterly reports. We knew what was going on. And it's actually, since this new council has come around, that we've had $100,000 budget deficit, because firing Mandy Mager herself cost about $60,000. Not to mention the fact that we now have a lawyer at $250 an hour that's here. And we never had that before either. We had him when we needed him, but not every single meeting. So, a lot of what's happened is recent, very, very recent.
Thank you.
I just want to say that Elise was the only person on the last council that was continuously questioning the budget and saying, we need to understand this better. Please give us time to understand this. I need to understand what we're saying. And it absolutely is everything that Jill just said, that everyone on this council should fully understand, grasp, and be able to regurgitate fully what the papers say. Everyone sat up here before, and obviously, as you're saying yourself, you don't know where the numbers came from.
I don't know where their numbers are coming
Well, they're the
from.
same
Let's
numbers you would have
focus
had
on
in front.
public comment.
They're
please.
the
Thanks.
numbers that would have been in front of you had you still been retaining that seat. And you would have been in the same know with all that you are in this moment. And Elise is up for recall, and she is the only person who was fighting for understanding. And we need to understand why she is being targeted. And this is a perfect example. She stood out like a sore thumb or a green thumb, depending on how you look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. She stole my joke. Who's next? Anybody else? All right, let's bring it back to council for. No, staff. Did you say you don't want direction right now on this item? You're
No,
gonna
no, no. I need you guys to approve that
Okay.
resolution. And as soon as I've got the draft, then I'll convene the ad hoc committee so we can start going over things and start making some recommendations in there. I mean, my feeling is we're going to tighten up the numbers, and if there are certain priorities that we need to ask the council, then we will bring that to you in November for introduction. And it might be introduced on the 20th, and we might have to approve it on the 25th. But
I have a question, because I do want to be able to make it as expeditious a process as possible. Because we've seen the Parks and Recreation budget overall double in a few short years, and effectively running at a deficit every single year, and that deficit increases. And knowing that we are very short on funds, what controls do you have in place, or what can you suggest that would be less than the 1/12? How can you monitor or help mitigate expenses from Parks and Rec without having to lay anybody off? I mean,
Right.
where and what
So,
can you do?
I think the big challenge is where the outlay of money comes in terms of timing, and that has been done. So it's like, at the beginning of the summer, then through the summer, and now you're scaling back in terms of your activities. So the bulk of those funds have been extended for purposes of the activities. I've had conversations with, park staff around, well, actually everybody, no. Really take a look at the expenditures. I want to see, anything that's, going to be large. And so this is a new thing for them too, right? And so we're trying to raise that level of awareness. There's also an issue of we need to have your staff doesn't know how budgets work.
Mhm.
So they don't know. They've been told how much they can spend. They don't know how to read and interpret a budget. Vicky knows how to read and interpret a budget, but in terms of everybody else, and I think that your park and recreations director has been learning and she's doing her best. But having that base familiarity with that, and so we're trying to do that. They do recognize that we had that conversation.
So one thing, go ahead,
No,
Miss.
just go ahead.
There, in particular, supplies, and there are a couple of like kind of amorphous listings under there for expenditures, and they've grown from a few $1,000s to like $10,000, $13,000. What can you do, and how can you help staff to ensure that you are aware of any significant spending before it occurs, and that it would get your approval, rather than saying, you just have this budget, we approved it,
Right.
so you can do it?
We'll just have another conversation with them to make sure to just double down on that. And like I say, the bulk of items that have been expended right now have been related primarily to the summer type things. There's been a few things that they're preparing for the concession stands, and I feel like that's a whole area that needs to have a different level of review. But we can do that. Okay. But
So right now, you need us to direct, we're gonna go ahead and do the 60-day extension. Is that what we're gonna do?
we need the continuing resolution, but I hear the message loud and clear, and then I'll be working on putting together the revised budget for purposes of circulating to the ad hoc committee so that we can get you guys something at the November 20th, was it, or the 19th
19th.
meeting? Yeah. I have it written down in my calendar.
So are we
Right.
looking for a motion right now then to
Yes.
approve this and then move forward? Can we?
So we're going to go forward, cutting back where possible and being very mindful of spending, with the expectation that our new budget is going to have potentially some reductions. We don't know where or how.
Mhm.
Is
No,
that what
that'll
I'm
be,
hearing?
she has the numbers put together. Clearly, I think I've expressed my hesitancy and my concerns. And given Jill's experience and integrity and awareness and doggedness in this, I trust very much that you'll keep a keen eye and support staff and help them make the right decisions. So whereas earlier I would have been ready to immediately propose some changes, I feel confident you'll be able to keep us on an even keel and be thoughtful. So I would recommend that for now, we make this extension
And
with,
Is
under
that a motion?
protest.
Sounds like a motion.
It's a motion.
We have a motion by Napier, second by Louis Lusso. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All,
Aye.
No. Aye.
okay.
Aye.
Roll call. Thank you.
And just for clarification, the motion was to approve resolution number 1245, authorizing the temporary extension of appropriations for fiscal year 25-26 pending the adoption of the annual budget.
Your note taker appreciates you.
Okay.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Napier,
Aye.
Louis Lusso,
Aye.
Swatsky,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Bayless.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
You may sign that document.
Oh, you got a signature
So,
page.
And So the ad hoc and you are gonna be
We're
looking
gonna
at this
continue
stuff
doing our work, yes.
and
Great.
making changes and shifting and this and that before it comes to us, right?
Um, yeah.
Essentially.
Item
Certainly
number
depends.
12, council correspondence, Natural Rural Water Association, notice of final loan payment.
This
Okay.
is good
Oh,
news,
yay,
right?
we have no
So
money.
the
Yay.
loan is paid, and I just wanted to make sure that you saw the notice as well as that final payment of $964. That one is done. There is another loan, I believe it's the one with REDAC, at about $1,200 a month, and that will sunset in March.
And what was this for? Or what was it used for? Do you know?
Yeah, we do. And now I'm just blanking on what it is. This was for the SCADA system.
What?
The SCADA system. It's a system. I
It's
don't
a thing. It's a
It's,
system.
doesn't it
Okay.
do our water?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
software
great.
system for your water, so that way if your tanks are getting high or low, and there's all sorts of reasons you can use SCADA. I think ICU with all those beeping, buzzing things for any things, same thing.
Gotcha.
So moving on to HCOG RHA methodology and transmittal.
This is just a letter that we received from Brendan Bird pertaining to the regional housing needs allocation. So we're looking at 41 units as we start looking forward to housing element number 7. Additionally, I do want to note that we received an email which had previously been sent out to members of the Safety Commission as well as council at the request of Mr. Kent Sawatsky. And we had a subsequent letter that Adeline has also submitted, which was left on your
Got it.
your
Got it.
thing on the dais.
Okay.
I
Dear diary.
I was named specifically in his letter, so I felt that I had to let people know. As a public safety commissioner and chair, my side of the issue. So if I hadn't been mentioned specifically, and I guess I'm Miss Jones, nobody other than Jones passed away. So
Do-
I thought I had to write a letter to clarify my position on that.
Thank you. I wish he hadn't done that.
Carry on.
So we will now need to adjourn to closed session. We do have somebody waiting. I'm going to text her and let her know.
Reports from council and staff.
Oh,
Let's just
well,
continue
skip-
those, shall we?
Can we continue them or do we need to do them?
we can continue it.
Till
What
when?
was
We
that?
could have done it.
To the next
It's
meeting.
standing item.
Yeah,
Great.
Nothing for tonight.
nothing for tonight.
Nothing to report.
There
I
we
don't
go.
have anything.
Great.
We had,
You guys did a great report.
oh, thank you. Like,
Yes.
Terry's incredible for.
Do you guys want to do it
budget
again?
background.
All right.
No. Wait, are we not going into closed session?
We are.
Oh, okay.
We were just going over
Practically.
this one, 13 reports.
Ah,
Motion to
thank
go
you.
into closed session?
To offer public comment on the closed session item.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to go ahead and provide the opportunity to comment on the closed session items, public employment appointment, title city manager, as well as conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on these items? Seeing
Where's the
none,
candy?
Stay safe
can I
out
get a
there.
motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go into closed session?
Motion by Scafani,
Second.
seconded by Louis Lusso. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, we're going into closed session.